G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. Those of you living in Australia or those of you paying attention to the Australian news and weather will be familiar with the fact that we've had what they call a rain bomb hanging over southeast Queensland and northeast New South Wales for about the last week. And it's been dropping huge amounts of rain to the degree that I think 6 people have died in the last 7 days in Queensland. And today's big news is that Lismore in particular in the northern New South Wales has had an absolute record flood, like a metre above the level of anything in the history of white settlement in Australia. And a lot of people have been trying conclusions with causeways. And there are certain rules with causeways. You have to have a lot of local knowledge to know when a causeway can be forded and when it can't be forded. I'm familiar with the local causeway, and well, not to put too fine a point on it, 8 days ago, after 57 millimetres worth of rain, my daughter had a crack at the causeway. She was distracted. She took the advice of the passenger and she didn't think things through in terms of what could happen if this goes wrong. And she didn't really understand the finer points of causeways. And when she started to get a bit frightened, she tried to go faster, and that created a bow wave. And creating a bow wave when you're going through deepish water is a problem. Before we get to the whole bow wavy thing, the reason why all the emergency services and everybody tells you do not go into flood waters, whether it's a designated causeway with a sign that says roadway goes under floodwaters, indicators show depth or something like that, which technically, lawfully gives you the permission to make the decision yourself. Other places where it's not a causeway and there's floodwaters, no, there's no reason to go into that. But the big reason as to why everybody says stay out of floodwaters, it's these things. These things do such a good job at sealing the doors against road noise that water can't get in through the doors. So when the water comes up underneath the car and it touches the floor of the car, the whole thing commences to float. Now that's showing 7 inches between floor level and ground level. 7 inches to there. We've got another 2 inches in the height of the container, so 9 inches clearance underneath the Forester. If you go into more water than that, then the car is gradually becoming a displacement vehicle. Okay, 9 inches, which is 23 centimetres. And off the road, the axles are 9 inches, 10 inches, 11 inches, 12 inches. So if the axles are 30 centimetres or 12 inches off the ground, the floor is 23 centimetres or 9 inches off the ground. And on my way home from town in that Forester, I came through 25 centimetres of water on the Yarraford Road Causeway. I did so as slow as possible so as not to generate a bow wave. And I was familiar with the idea that, yeah, you can do that because you've still got, at that point, probably a third to a half of the car's weight is going down through the wheels into the water, which was pretty much still. If that water at that height, 25 centimetres, remember we got 5 centimetres for the height of the case, so 25 centimetres of water was coming up to here, which is an interference fit by about 2.5 centimetres with the height of the floor of the car. So, okay, let's say I had 75% of the weight of the car was on the wheels, perhaps 25% of the weight of the car was being taken up by the displacement of the floor pan. Been there before, done it before, knew it was safe. and I slowed down, put it in first gear, and sort of putted my way across. Because I knew we were on the hairy edge of the margin. If the water was any deeper, the car would float, and if I tried to go too fast, I would push up a bow wave. When you push up a bow wave in a Forester, it's not actually that terribly dire a situation, because the top of the headlight is 80 centimetres off the ground, or the 31.5 inches. Okay, that's part one of the story. Part two of the story is that before the air gets to that box for the air filter, it has to come through this circular pipe. And this circular pipe comes all the way over to here, and to get to the engine, the air gets sucked vertically straight up into the bottom of that pipe, or that chamber. There is the opening into which the air gets sucked. So the air goes in vertically up into that box, has to move horizontally across to here, sideways over to there, before going into that pipe. Down here, there's a hemispherical dome. Now what that's supposed to do to the airflow, I'm not entirely sure. I think it does something to create turbulence in the flow of the air moving along this pipe here. As the air moves along that pipe, having first climbed up here, then there's a downward slope leading to a great big box with two chambers and a vertical component up here, and then the air goes across the top to where there's yet another water trap bottle, and then the air comes further uphill, having gone past a third vertical downwards emptying water trap. See that? That pipe is purely there to lead water down away from the air inlet. Cobwebs out of the way. That's the back of the light. So that forms a pretty good barrier to water getting to where the air comes in. So you might as well say that technically, in theory, you can go into water to about here before enough water is going to come in through the radiator, up through the bottom, to get any chance of being sucked into the air inlet. And then it's got a swirl hemisphere, it's got a big water trap, it's got a little water trap, and then it's got a water drain. So your Subaru Forester will probably allow you to drive into water that's deep enough that the car then lifts up and floats away. Not so good, is it? By comparison, a RAV4, which actually has 16-inch rims compared to 15-inch rims, so the vehicle actually looks taller, and we have 14 inches of clearance between the floor of the car and the ground it drives over. So it's unlikely to float away because it's going to be taking the weight of the vehicle through the wheels. However, right there at the 80 centimetre mark, same height as the air intake on the Forester, just there, that is the air intake for the RAV4. Exactly where my probe is now. And there is virtually nothing between any oncoming bow wave and the air intake pipe of your RAV4. After which, its air goes down vertically, maybe 15-20 centimetres, and then it comes up If it goes down 20, it comes up 15. And then the air goes into this box, and that's where the air cleaner is. There's the filter element, and there's some of the river water, which 8 days ago, after my son pulled the spark plugs out and turned the engine over with the starter motor, we had 4 fountains of river water coming out of this, and then the con rods that were bent broke, or the pistons broke, and this became a lawn ornament, not a motor car any no more. We have satisfactorily proved on the Yarraford Road Causeway that the RAV4, which has got an extra 3 inches of road clearance between the floor and the bottom of the riverbed, it's got a really terrible design of air intake, and if you give it any sort of fear-driven hurry-ups while you're going through the water, you will create a bow wave which will come up and go straight in there, and it will flood your engine and kill your car. And that's why the daughter's old RAV4 has no numbering of the plates. It's also why it has no sun foil. So not only do you have to really know the causeway, you have to really know your car. There we go. Rainbow sky decorations by the rain gods or the creator spirit of the universe. I don't know, but it's a good rainbow. It deserves to be in the video. So, point of the exercise, you have to really have a good reason to go over a causeway that's got water on it. If it's not a causeway and it's got water on it, no reason is sufficient. You should wait until after the flood subsides, because if it's an ordinary bitumen road or a dirt road with water over the top, you have no idea what you're going to find when you go through it. There may be a road there, there may be a 2 metre deep pothole that'll suck your whole car in. You don't know. If it's a causeway, a concrete causeway designed to be a causeway, it might be reasonable to expect there's a road surface under the water. If there's indicators to show you the depth, you should already know what are the limits of your car. 25 centimetres for a forester in absolutely still water when you go slow. If the water goes any particular noticeable speed sideways across the causeway, like if you've got 10 or 15 kilometres an hour, 8 or 10 miles an hour of water going sideways through the causeway, then the water's going to touch the bottom of your car and it's going to pile up. And it'll pile up halfway up your door and your passenger won't be able to get the door open. In the case of the RAV4 8 days ago, the passenger was able to open the door and no water came into the car. So it really truly was not a lot of water, it was just erroneous technique. But here's the final snippet. If you go into a causeway and you get stuck, don't bother calling the roadside assistance organisations. The NRMA will not attend a car that's stuck in floodwaters in the middle of a causeway. I pulled the RAV4 out with a hempen rope attached to the tow bar of the Forester. Then my son came out with his workshop truck, 5-tonne 4-wheel drive, forded the causeway, pulled the spark plugs out, diagnosed an absolutely dead engine, and then dragged the thing backwards up here where it's sort of sitting waiting for the riggers. Such is life. Lesson learned. The best part about it, the people in the car did not have to swim. There was no need for a swift water rescue. And as usual, my family leads the community, you know, like we were killing a car 8 days ago. It's only 7 days ago that people in southeast Queensland started dying in the floodwaters. We managed to kill a car, but none of the people in the car. And like I said, lesson learned. And those are the numbers. You find the numbers out when you go underneath your car with a measuring stick and you figure out what your car is capable of and what it's not capable of, and you make bloody sure not to do it unless you know the car is capable. Otherwise, whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? You can't actually really blame the passenger. You can't take the passenger's bloody advice. They're not driving the car. Lesson learned. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Not all four-wheel drives are equal. Some are more better than others. If you go too fast through still water in a RAV4, you can kill the engine. Whereas the engine will keep going in a Forester until you get deep enough in there until you'll lift up and float the thing straight off the concrete and you will go sideways. Small details matter. And now that the shit oh dear and the oopsie factor has somewhat subsided 8 days after the event, now that she's got herself a replacement car, which is in fact a Forester, my daughter has given me permission to speak about this on YouTube, because I think it's a video worth making. You know, yes, there are times and there are places where you can safely drive through a causeway with water on it. However, you have to know the depth of the water, you have to know the causeway. This particular causeway, if only the western stream is over the causeway, it is safe. If the eastern stream is over the causeway, it is not safe. The eastern and the western streams drain different ridges, they drain different valleys, they collect different amounts of water that flow at different speeds. And if you don't know that, then it's down to a knowledge of what your car can survive, and that's the depth gauge. Plus the Mark 1 eyeball to judge the speed of the water. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Such is life. Ciao.